book of the prophet Jeremiah. Behold, the days are coming, says the Lord, when I will raise up a righteous shoot to David. As king he shall reign and govern wisely. He shall do what is just and right in the land. The season of Advent is a time of waiting. And this has always been the basic theme of this time before the great feast of Christmas. And this is especially the time in the church when we hear those wonderful readings from the prophet Isaiah, as they look forward to the day of the Lord, the day of comfort for his people, that day when every valley shall be exalted, when all rough places will be made plain, all mountains will be made low, that day when the wolf shall be the guest of the lamb, a day of an end to all mourning and weeping. The Lord will come with his power and healing. It is a wonderful thing that we have come together here on this Advent Saturday morning. Chances are that for most of us, this is the only time in this season that we will come together to do what the church asks us to do at this time, to gather and wait. Wait, but not passively, but actively. And this waiting takes place not as isolated individuals, but as part of the family of the church, we, the adopted sons and daughters of God. But waiting does not come easy to us. And that's why Advent means not very much to most Catholics at this time in history. Because we no longer know how to wait. And because we have forgotten how to wait, we do not put ourselves into a position in which we can do active waiting. But that's what we have come here to do this morning. Wait. When I was teaching both the high school and also the college level, I used to ask my students why they and their friends use all these filler words constantly in their conversation. Words like, you know, so forth. And I'm sure that you all like what I like mean. My students agreed that this had become a habit. And one astute student said that he thought that they always did this because they want to make sure that they're always thinking about what to say next, and so that there'll be no silence in the gaps. Because silence in speech today, even for a second, means lack of activity. And a silence between people in a conversation is awkward. While speech, even if it is meaningless filler, indicates that something is really happening. that this attitude has infected relationships like marriage and like friendship, I have no doubt. It used to be understood that the depth of love between two people can be measured by their comfort in being together alone in silence, and using that silence to quietly deepen love. This is ultimately true about our relationship to God, which on God's side is a relationship in total silence. There can be no pause in speech for so many people today because we all know that all-pervading impatience that is a mark of today's world. And how the slightest pause, the slightest silence in our conversation always evoked impatience in the one to whom we are speaking. That pause, that silence, frightens a generation so intent on always moving ahead as fast as possible, so intent on proving their worth and proving their intelligence, so sensitive among their peers who always interpret silence as a problem, something embarrassing. And if the truth be told, much of our speaking is chatter to cover up the silence that would ensue if we really started thinking, and especially if that thinking led us to the conclusion that there is really nothing to say. All of this is a problem for Christian waiting, because this type of waiting demands silence. Without silence, we cannot be attentive. Without this attention, we cannot possibly hear and see and know for what or for whom we are waiting. Attentive silence is something that we have to relearn. It's not natural to us, especially in the chatter-filled world which we live. When I have a doctor's appointment and I am waiting in the waiting room, I immediately look around the magazines, and I start reading, no matter how silly they are and no matter how empty they are, I have no interest in them, but have to do something. Perhaps because I want to be distracted from thinking about what I am waiting for there in the doctor's office. And perhaps sometimes this deliberate act of distraction comes from fear that the doctor will tell me that something is really wrong with me. But even if it is a routine checkup, I cannot imagine just sitting there in silence to wait. In Advent, we are asked to wait in silent attention, looking forward to the one for whom we are waiting. This means not just marking time until the feast of Christmas comes. We know that Christmas will come and go. Yes, we do everything we can to make this day special for family and friends, the special meals with the special foods, the giving and the receiving of gifts, that time together that every Christmas is so very special. But that's not what we're waiting for in Advent. We wait for God. We wait for God in our lives, in reality. For the God who was made flesh, for the God who is present in spirit. And we wait for God to return. Christmas is not the goal of Advent. It's its center. From the night on which the unthinkable and the impossible happened, that the infinite God, who is spirit, should take flesh and be born into this world. From that night on, all time flows radially out from that center. That night gives meaning to time itself for the Christian. And that silent night, that holy night, is not so much the beginning of the new time of recreation, but rather becomes the center of time. That center from which then, as Catholics, we all get our bearings. When we celebrate Christmas with all of its beauty, all of its wonder, we are reminded of why we wait and for whom we wait. We are reminded that our hearts are restless until they rest in the one who is the way, the truth, and the life, the Alpha and the Omega. The Christ child in the manger pierces our hearts because he has pierced the deepest bowels of creation. The Christ child pierces our hearts because the wood of the manger becomes the wood of the cross. And the nails that hold that manger together become the nails that are driven into his hands and into his feet. On this night, the angels sing, because what Isaiah looked forward to is fulfilled. God has come to rescue his people. But who saw this? Who noticed this? There were no shouts, there were no bright lights, there were no talking heads all over the place to explain reality away as they always do. The song the angels sang was heard only by those who were waiting in the silence of the fields, tending their sheep. The light of the star was seen only by those who were looking for it in patient waiting for years, and then waiting even more on a long and arduous trip. When God in the flesh was born of the Virgin Mary, the world missed it. And the world was not paying attention, because the world was not waiting in patient, attentive silence. It was waiting in chatter. And the same is true today. Christmas comes and goes, and the world, and this now includes most of the Christian world. The world misses it. They miss it because they're not waiting for God to become man so that man might become immortal. They are not waiting for the world to be embraced by this infinite love. Their lives are impatiently lived staring at a TV screen or a computer screen or an iPhone, flipping, where reality is nowhere to be found. Where news and entertainment are deliberately blurred. And where it has become impossible to discern between what's real and what's play acting. With constant impatience, we click, we surf, we phone, we text, and we watch paralyzed as our children are addicted to a screen and more confuse images with what is real. We are part of a culture that has turned Christmas, and that word means Christ's Mass, the Mass of Christ. We have turned it into a holiday. Happy holiday, happy holiday. A generic winter holiday that reminds us of our need to wait, that waiting for God, that ought to be the definition of our lives as Christians. It cannot, and it does not. Patient waiting means waiting in faith. Faith makes waiting a Christian act. And probably the best analogy to what we are talking about is pregnancy. I could go on in theological and poetical ways to try to further describe what Advent waiting is. But it's pregnancy that describes it so well. Because this waiting by the woman involves the whole person, the whole woman, body, mind, heart, and soul. And the male can never understand. The male can never know what this feels like, what this is. The man is always an outsider to this profound act of waiting, this act of waiting. Those women who are here and our mothers know what I am talking about. Of course, the irony is that as a man, I do not know what I am talking about. But I glimpsed a bit in my own wife's pregnancies. But still, this does not contain the specifically Christian understanding of active waiting. For it is in Mary's pregnancy that we see so clearly that it can be seen by both women and men. Because the Blessed Virgin comes to us in Advent season as the very icon, as the image of what it means to be a Christian waiting actively. Pregnancy will not tolerate impatience. It cannot be hurried. It cannot be processed faster. It can't be coaxed or forced along. And whatever the technological advances may be, it always happens in the dark of the womb, where life grows in warm darkness. the darkness of the life-giving, nurturing womb. Pregnancy always demands faith, faith that what's happening in the mother's body is real, is good, and it'll bear fruit. Even if that fruit is not perfect in the eyes of the world. And this is waiting in faith. And in Mary's case, this is intensified to a clarity of faith that is pure grace. The virgin shall conceive and bear a son. The power of the Holy Spirit will overshadow you. You should call his name Jesus. And the angel departed. So Mary waits patiently and in faith. And so Joseph makes a decision of faith, and he waits with her. This is the Holy Family whose whole life is Advent. That waiting that does not mind the dark. The waiting that prefers staying close to the ground where sounds can be heard more clearly. That waiting that is grounded in the silence of the heart where the still small voice of God whispers. God whispers hope and love. And so we wait. We take this time to wait in silence, actively patient, seeing with the eye of faith the light that shines in the darkness that surrounds us. What we must do is to teach our children how to wait. Teach them what Christian waiting means and how to live their lives in that expectant waiting, and how silence and faith makes this waiting possible to bear fruit. How this waiting fills the Christian life with a joy that has come, is coming, and will come again. Just as Mary's life is an icon for us for living the Christian life in patient waiting, so we must be icons for our children. They have to see our everyday lives, our lives seen and felt as icons painted with the dark hues of silence and the greens of patience and the bright reds of joy. But like all icons, our children must be able to look through us, the parents, to the one who is the reality beyond the image. That love that came down at Christmas. We wait for thy coming, O Lord, in the midst of thy temple. Judah and Jerusalem, fear not, nor be dismayed. Tomorrow go ye forth, and the Lord will be with you. Stand ye still, and ye shall see the salvation of our God. We wait for thy coming, O Lord, in the midst of thy temple. Next talk will be at 10:30. And I hope that you all take this opportunity to wait in silence. wait here, we wait here, of course, in the church, and as you know, the Lord is present here, of course, in the tabernacle. To the chapel, here to the left, you can go there to wait. But wait in silence. Can you all hear me?